Welcome to ADA's 74th Gala. Thank you for joining us. My name is Art Haywood. I am president of ADA and Pennsylvania State Senator. We come here to celebrate 75 years of action to protect our democracy and freedoms, and to celebrate and recognize some outstanding individuals.
Hello, my name is Kurt Meyer. I hail from Iowa, and I'm the chair of the ADA Executive Committee. Let me briefly touch on some of what ADA has been up to in the past year. ADA successfully navigated the pandemic to reach key voters across the country, defeating Trump, delivering a majority to the Senate, and keeping our majority in the House. We have organized and lobbied for issues such as pandemic relief, both continuation and expansion, police accountability and reform, Medicare for all, and a minimum wage increase, and of course, protection and expansion of voting rights. Our momentum is already building toward 2022 with targeted education and organizing activities in key communities across the country. Of course, with more, we can do more. Thank you sincerely for your activism and for your financial support, without which none of this would be possible.
In his 1982 memoir, A Life in Our Times, John Kenneth Galbraith, my father, describes being at the Willard Hotel on January 4th, 1947, with the archons of contemporary liberal faith: Eleanor Roosevelt, Hubert Humphrey, Chester Bowles, Joseph Rao Jr., Reinhold Niebuhr, David Dubinsky, and Arthur Schlesinger Jr., to found the ADA. By his own account, his sole contribution to the founding was to urge that the new organization be named the Liberal Union. I was defeated, he wrote. Far more consequentially, he was elected chairman of the ADA in 1967, unopposed in an exercise of democratic centralism arranged by Joe Rao and Leon Schull, and used that platform to recruit Gene McCarthy to run against Lyndon Johnson. The ADA then endorsed McCarthy in the primary challenge to Johnson, driving the incumbent from the race. It was a high point of the ADA's influence, but something of a tragedy for American liberalism. In the previous 4 years, Johnson had enacted so much of the ADA agenda, from civil rights to the war on poverty. But this was now overshadowed by the war in Vietnam. My father considered the war in Vietnam unwinnable. The government of South Vietnam, in spite of billions invested in it, was corrupt, ineffective, and unpopular. It was a counterinsurgency without the essential element for success: a local partner. 50 years later, the same statement could be made about the U.S. war in Afghanistan, except the cost was in the trillions, not billions. John Kenneth Galbraith would have applauded President Biden's decision not to prolong an unwinnable war, and even more what President Biden had to say about it. The decision about Afghanistan, President Biden said, is not just about Afghanistan. It's about ending an era of major military operations to remake other countries. War, my father wrote in the last sentence of his last book, remains the decisive human failure. On behalf of the Galbraith family, we celebrate all that ADA has accomplished in the last 75 years, and that you will honor the legacy of its founders, my father included, by keeping up the struggle for peace and justice.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
It's an honor to join all of you. And to those of you in the ADA, thank you for the ongoing and intense work to protect our democracy, to support public education, and to promote an economy where everyone has a shot. Everyone has access to opportunity, and everyone has the potential to thrive. And before I introduce my dear friend, Stuart Applebaum, I want to acknowledge your two other honorees, Representative Janie Raskin and Alan Cuckovich. To our dear, dear friend, Representative Raskin. Jamie, you are a true profile of courage and of patriotism. I will never forget in the dark hours during and after the January 6th coup, your principled leadership, even in the midst of your own devastating grief, helped our nation learn the truth about what happened and helped create courage in many of us. And you continue to demonstrate that we as a nation must demand accountability and must fight for our democracy. You're providing all of us with an indispensable lesson on civics, citizenship, and leadership. And Alan, I want you to know a small thing about Alan Cuckovich, something that tells you a little about him that he won't tell you himself. In the 80s, when a pay raise was on the table for PA state reps, instead of accepting it, Alan used the funds to establish a public service scholarship for high school seniors. As a former civics teacher, I can say to you that I am sure you made a difference in the lives of so many. Those kind of scholarships are huge for people. And now let me turn to Stuart. I've known Stuart for a lifetime. We have known each other from when he and I were both staffers, him at RWDSU and me at the UFT. He's a true and trusted friend, a union brother, colleague and fellow vice president on the AFL-CIO, and we partner in our efforts to connect our Jewish values with the cause of justice everywhere for working people and for all people. Stuart holds many positions in the labor movement, both in the U.S. and internationally. He is also a community advocate, a Democrat, an accomplished lawyer, and a person of great faith. From growing up in Connecticut and going to Jewish summer camp, spoiler alert, we went to the same camp, to pursuing his law degree, to coming out and his marriage to Mishihito Osowa, there's a theme that runs through Stuart's life. And that theme is Tikkun Olam, seeking a fairer, more just society in which we all seek justice. And that means economic justice, social justice, emotional justice. In short, the theme is justice, justice, you shall pursue. As president of the Retail Wholesale Department Store Union, which we all know as RWDSU, Stewart has been most recently known for his audacious efforts to unionize Amazon workers, warehouse workers in Bessemer, Alabama. And just like when David said he'd fight Goliath, and for those of us who remember the story, that was pretty scary, Stewart said that RWDSU and the collective labor movement would fight for those 5,800 workers and take on a corporation not only that's valued at $315 billion, but is known for its anti-union animus. Now, the Amazon workers story is far from over, and Stewart will no doubt talk about that, but also talk about the need to pass the PRO Act, Protecting the Right to Organize bill, that is before Congress right now. But ultimately, think about the imagination to lead that kind of fight for the future, that kind of fight to help workers, that kind of fight to try to put an end to Amazon's inhumane, dystopian working conditions, the fight to create a more just workplace. That is who Stuart Applebaum is, fighting to make sure that people have the respect and dignity to which they are entitled, as opposed to a practice of management by algorithm, discipline by app, and firing by text. And that's not the only fight for justice that Stewart has led. He's pursued the legalization of adult use cannabis in New York State. From the vantage point of representing some 500 workers in New York's medical cannabis industry, Stewart recognized that legalizing marijuana could either be a windfall for big corporations or an opportunity to help small and community-based businesses. He recognized that the legislation could spawn minimum wage jobs or create good-paying union work. Importantly, he also recognized that the bill could ignore the racial inequities that resulted from criminalizing the use of marijuana, and the legalization could lead to a real economic opportunity for people of color who had been so unfairly impacted by the discriminatory and unequal application of the nation's drug laws. Once again, where others saw commerce, Stewart saw justice. Stewart's work, from helping to raise the wages of thousands of Port Authority airport workers to helping car wash workers win respect and better pay, to recently helping New York City's Greenlight bookstore and yours truly stationery store, those employees win union representation, it's helped achieve a just salary and dignity on the job for so many. Stewart also plays a big role in the DNC. He's a member of the executive committee. He's the chair of the labor committee, and he has made sure the voice of workers is heard within the walls of the DNC. Personally, Stewart and I share a deep connection to our Jewish values. Through his leadership of the JLC, the Jewish Labor Committee, he has helped maintain the through line between Judaism and the cause of worker justice, which has been inextricably linked throughout our history. So I think I'll end with a quote from an interview that Stewart gave the JTA, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, earlier this year as the Amazon campaign was being waged. The quote I share is Stewart's. Asked how Jews fit into the struggle of working people for a better life, Stewart noted that there is only one place in the Torah where a word is repeated: Tzedek, Zedek, Tirdof. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. In honoring Stewart, let these words be a guide to all of us as well. Congratulations, Stewart.
I want to thank you all for this honor, but more importantly, I want to thank the ADA for the important work you do in standing up and speaking out for progressive values and protecting our democracy at a time when our democracy has been under attack. We now understand how fragile our democracy really is. Your vision for our society is progressive and inclusive, and I am so proud to say that vision naturally includes advancing and protecting the rights of working people. During the pandemic, we saw clearly how essential so many workers are and how their work needs to be valued. Even as others were able to isolate themselves and work from home, these essential workers came to work every day despite the risk, despite their fears, and putting themselves in danger's way. They worked in our supermarkets and pharmacies. They processed our food and poultry plants and other food processing plants. They worked in our nursing homes and in our hospitals and in so many other places. And society could not have functioned, it could not have survived without them. Many of these workers became sick, and many of them, including members of my own union, died. These workers were essential long before the pandemic, even if they were often invisible. And finally, people have begun to understand the importance of their contribution. But it is not good enough to just say thank you. The way to really thank these workers is to understand what it is they really need, which is to be treated with respect at work, to be treated with safe working conditions, and with fair pay and benefits. And that includes the workers at Amazon warehouses all across the country. Amazon is well on its way to becoming the largest employer in our country. And not a single one of its employees in any of its warehouses, anywhere in the United States, is organized. Amazon is transforming industry after industry, from e-commerce to logistics to technology to so many more. Amazon's business model is based on feasting off of public subsidies, paying little or no taxes, and mistreating and dehumanizing its workforce. We cannot afford to allow Amazon's model to become the future of work. Our fight with Amazon is broader than this one company. It has really been about the future of work and how workers are going to be treated in that future. Workers at Amazon told us over and over again how they felt like robots being managed by other robots. They are managed by an algorithm. They get their assignments by a text on their phone, and they are fired or disciplined by text message. The pressure of the pace of work is unbearable, and that is why there is a 150% turnover rate among Amazon workers each year. We cannot afford to let Amazon go unchallenged. This needs to be a cause for the entire labor movement and not just one union. It's why we need to be standing up to them. We have no choice but to challenge them. We did that in New York City when Amazon sought to build its new headquarters here. We are doing that on the global stage. And we continue to do that in Bessemer, Alabama, where we held the first union election ever anywhere at any Amazon warehouse in the United States. and our campaign in Bessemer is continuing. And we are fighting to organize the Amazon workers there and everywhere. Friends, keep standing up. Keep speaking out. And thank you for this honor this evening.
For almost 75 years, everything ADA is and does and accomplishes has been due to the support of people like you. There's no magic formula here. We simply do our best with what we have, targeting our energies and our efforts to bring about the greatest impact. Then, taking our story to those who agree with us and asking for your continued generous support. That's what we're doing right now. Please join ADA by becoming a member or by renewing your membership and or by making a special contribution to help us bring about the end of devastating Trumpism, to pass enlightened, progressive legislation, and to keep and expand our majorities in Congress. Go to adaction.org. That's adaction.org. Join me in supporting this wonderful organization. Oh, and be generous. Please and thank you.
Happy to be greeting you and congratulating you tonight from my home state of Hawaii, a Democratic bastion. I'm presenting to you my own copy of The Woman Behind the New Deal, a book that I spent many years writing, which is the story of America's great Democratic heroine, Frances Perkins, still a guiding light of the Democratic Party 50 years after her death in 1965. Thanks to Frances Perkins' work, we have Social Security and unemployment insurance, tools that prove their value so dramatically in the past 2 years. We had a great victory last year when Congress almost unanimously embraced an expansion of unemployment insurance, an action that helps stave off destitution for millions of Americans. I wrote this book when I was a reporter at the Washington Post, where I learned how difficult it is to enact progressive legislation and came to realize that positive change can sometimes take decades to occur. Much of this hard work happens behind the scenes. I'm joining with Americans for Democratic Action tonight in offering my thanks for your tireless efforts to advance the caring spirit of the Democratic Party and your continued work to make America a better place for everyone. My name is Kirsten Downey, and I authorize this message.
Hey everybody, it's Jamie Raskin. I want to send my gratitude and my love to all of my friends at Americans for Democratic Action. Thank you for this fantastic award. I don't know if I deserve this award, but I will certainly spend the rest of my career working to deserve this award. And what an honor it is to be associated in any way with the great Frances Perkins, who was our first woman cabinet member, the longest serving cabinet member, I think, certainly the longest serving labor secretary, and really the person who set the standard for what a labor secretary should do. And she, of course, was an amazing champion of Social Security, which has been our most successful social insurance program and most successful progressive project that our democracy has embraced. So I'm honored to be associated with her in any way at all. And I'm proud to be a big time supporter of the Biden-Harris administration, which has returned the idea to public life that the government is an instrument of the common good and the common man and the common woman, and that government is not the private plaything of the president. It should not be an instrument of self-enrichment and money-making, which is what it became under Donald Trump. So we are back on the path of progressive liberalism, which is the path of the ADA. I'm proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with you guys and to fight to defend democracy against all of its fanatical enemies, whether it's the Taliban or the Three Percenters or the Oath Keepers and the Aryan Nations or Donald Trump himself. We've got to stand strong for the voting rights of the people, for a democratic process, for integrity in the electoral process against those who would try to derail and hijack and kidnap our democracy for their own private gain and for their own self-advancement. So I'm proud to work with you all. Thank you for this amazing recognition. And please stay in very close touch in the struggles ahead, because I wish I could say it was all over after the impeachment trial. It was not. We ended up with a 57-43 verdict, which does complete a bipartisan, bicameral process of stating that Trump did incite a violent insurrection against Congress and against the 2020 election. However, Trump escaped the full weight of a constitutional conviction. He beat the constitutional spread. And so there's a little ambiguity there. I think that we have discredited him and made him persona non grata in American politics, and yet he still unbelievably controls lock, stock, and barrel one of our major political parties. So we've got to continue this struggle and stand tall and stand strong for strong democracy in America. And I'm proud to be working with the ADA on just that purpose. Thank you so much.
Greetings to ADA members and guests from Western Pennsylvania. I don't know what it is like in other states that are red and blue, but Pennsylvania, as James Carville has said, is Philadelphia and Pittsburgh with Alabama in the middle. Alan is from Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, and has lived in the red part of our state for all of his life, which makes him a man of courage and perhaps foolhardiness, reaching out to those who can hear him and those who might choose to be deaf, and succeeding for 27 years to hold office. He was in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives from 1977 to 1996, switching from the House to the Senate in 1996, where he served until 2004. During that time, he worked to create and to pass legislation, major legislation, that has been a template for other states. The greatest being the Pennsylvania Children's Healthcare Partnership Act, otherwise known as CHIP, which my own daughter took advantage of when she moved from California to Pittsburgh with a 2-year-old child. Alan's battles have been many and ongoing. He never stops advocating. He fights for all of us. The environment, state ethics, economic development, healthcare, welfare, citizens, labor, children, as I said, all of us. Congratulations, Alan. You more than deserve this award, one of many. You are a true gentleman and a fighter for all of us. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for your kind words, Georgia. This award means a lot to me for a number of reasons. First of all, being named the Win Newman Award winner is very special. Win was someone who I had always admired, not just he, but his career. Somebody who started so early fighting for union rights in places like Texas, fighting for desegregation. I think it goes back to when he was a student. And not just fighting for civil rights, but women's rights, for everything we've always believed in. It matters a lot. The timing of this award is interesting for me too. There's a kind of synchronicity here because we're kicking off the 75th anniversary of the founding of ADA. I was born 9 months after ADA was born. And it was about, I think, 52 years ago I first became a member of ADA. So this matters a lot. And the timing of the era we're entering into, we've built up a history of fighting for progressive policies, of historic battles on the left between the right. And maybe now we're entering a time when our fight is even bigger, a fight for democracy versus authoritarianism. And finally, on a personal level, I've been very fortunate to have the chance to make great friendships with so many of you. It means a lot to me. And I thank you for this award, and I hope to see you in person soon.
Are you still with us? Not only in watching this great virtual gathering, but in tracking on what we're doing? Think about this. In my decade of involvement with ADA, I have met liberal/progressive champions who have been political warriors for as long, for our organization and for our cause and for our country, for literally as long as I've been alive. But as my sainted mother-in-law was always quick to note, there's always room for more at a round table. At ADA, our table is round and we're waiting for you to join us. As a member, as an activist, as a financial supporter, as a leader, thanks for watching. Thanks for your interest. Stay tuned. And as we say at ADA, the best is yet to come.
Hello there. This is Vicki Brown coming to you from Waterloo, Iowa, where I love being a part of Americans for Democratic Action. For 75 years, ADA has been building the progressive movement. When I was a little girl, marching with the likes of Dr. King and Congressman John Lewis in Birmingham, Alabama, ADA was helping to build the civil rights movement across the country. Today, ADA is still at it, right here in Iowa, electing progressives and championing workers' rights, living wages, LGBTQ rights, Black Lives Matter, climate action, and women's rights. The work ADA does matters. Happy 75th anniversary, ADA.
Good evening. I'm Tim Thomas, National Board Member of Americans for Democratic Action from the Northeastern Illinois chapter. I'm from Oak Park, Illinois, where I currently serve as an Oak Park Township trustee, western suburb of Chicago. I'm proud to be an ADA member because without ADA, I would have never achieved becoming an elected official. Through ADA, I've gotten much more engaged and active in my community, from hosting forums around the 7th Congressional District to hosting forums around the Illinois Attorney General's race. I've been able to participate in Black Lives Matter marches and a host of other events and activities. I appreciate ADA for all the work that they've done over the years. I congratulate them on 75 years of service, and congratulations to all the awardees and attendees of tonight's event. Thank you, and have a great evening.
Hey everybody, this is Sammy Sheets here in Cedar Rapids, candidate for Iowa House, running to be the first Arab American member of the Iowa legislature. Just wanted to let you all know that I'm now officially a member of ADA, Americans for Democratic Action, one of the leading progressive organizations in this country that works to empower disenfranchised and disadvantaged working class people in this country. I encourage you all to join and get involved as soon as you can. Thanks so much.
If you hear this message, wherever you stand, I'm calling every woman, calling every man. We're the generation, we can't afford to wait. The future started yesterday, and we're already late. We've been looking for a song to sing, search for a melody, search for someone to lead. We've been looking for the world to change. If you feel the same, then go out and say if you're out there. Sing along with me if you're out there. I'm dying to believe that you're out there. Stand up and say it loud if you're out there. Tomorrow's starting now. No more broken promises, no more call to war. Unless it's love and peace.
us that we're really fighting for. We can destroy hunger, we can conquer hate. Put down the arms and raise your voice. We're joining hands today. Oh, I was looking for a song to sing, search for a leader, but the leader was me. We were looking for the world to change. We can't be heroes, just go on and say if you're out there. Sing along with me if you're out there. I'm dying to believe that you're out there. Stand up and say it loud if you're out there. Tomorrow's starting now. Oh, if you're ready, we can change the world. Believe again, it starts within. And we don't have to wait for destiny. We should be the change that we want to see. If you're out there, are you out there? Oh, if you're out there and you're ready now, say it loud, scream it out. If you're out there, sing along with me. If you're out there, I'm dying to believe you're out there. Stand up and sing it loud. If you're out there, tomorrow's starting now. If you're out, if you're out there.
It is a great privilege for me to be part of this celebration of the 75th anniversary of Americans for Democratic Action. As you know, my grandmother, Eleanor Roosevelt, worked together with other great Democratic leaders from labor, from elected positions, and activists all across the country to form ADA 75 years ago. They knew, and she especially knew from her background in New York politics, that being a Democrat was necessary for the well-being of our country and our people. But that's not sufficient. There had to be a group dedicated to a progressive agenda at home and abroad. And that was and is ADA. The President and the Congress needed to hear from that group, as it does today, as they did from her on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights at the United Nations, on desegregating the military, on protecting workers in many ways. Some of you may know the story about the group of activists that met with my grandfather in the Oval Office. And at the end of their meeting, he said, "All right, you've convinced me. Now go out and make me do it." That's what I see ADA as being about. The issues may be somewhat different today, although sadly they're not that different. The spirit is the same. The needs, in many ways, are at least as urgent. I've had the opportunity to work over the last few months with a group of descendants of other New Deal cabinet members, and we have been working on keeping a progressive agenda at the forefront, supporting President Biden, supporting Speaker Pelosi and Majority Leader Schumer, but also trying to urge that they not take half a loaf, that they go for jobs and infrastructure and Social Security and the other needs that we have, childcare, education, home care, so many needs that we have in our country. It's not the time to back off, it's the time to press forward. That's what ADA has always been about. That's what
makes me so enthusiastic to continue to be a member of ADA as I have been for many years. So thank you for letting me be part of this, but also thank you for everything you do to support ADA.
It's hard to describe the joy and the honor it is to be able to speak right before Eleanor Clift and to introduce her for this award that she so richly deserves. I feel like I should begin by saying, let me finish, excuse me, let me finish. Those were famous Eleanor Clift words when she appeared on the McLaughlin Group, which was, shall we say, a very male show, and we can say that with great affection for the late Jack Germond, who was one of the contributors. Long before Elizabeth Warren, you might say, Eleanor Clift persisted. What an amazing life and career she had. It's so appropriate that she is getting this award because she proved from the time she was 13 years old that she was a great writer. She entered an essay contest writing about what the United Nations means to me. And Eleanor Roosevelt, a founder of ADA, was one of the judges. Imagine this, imagine how much the world has changed and how much Eleanor Clift was a pioneer for so many women around the country over many generations. She rose from being a secretary to being a reporter and eventually rising to be the White House bureau chief and the chief White House correspondent and the Washington bureau chief for Newsweek. Eleanor has a wonderful, warm way about her. And she said, without any resentment about her time as a typist, I was just glad to be at a place where what I typed was interesting. God bless you, Eleanor, for that. She was grew up in Jackson Heights in Queens, and her dad and mom ran a deli, which is a place you really learn a lot about reporting and talking to people. She covered all manner of major events. She was there with the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan. And appropriately enough, she wrote a cover story for Newsweek, much acclaimed, on Mad Men. I think that's something, a topic on which she learned, about which she learned an awful lot in the course of her life and her rise. But I think we also are remembering Eleanor tonight, and perhaps primarily for this reason, we are honoring her because she was such a strong moral voice all her life on behalf of justice, on behalf of civil rights, and yes, women's rights, on behalf of a kind of politics of decency, you could say, and a politics of inclusion. I used to root every week for Eleanor when we watched that path-breaking show, the McLaughlin Group, which continues. I still root for her to this day, as so many people in this audience do. But above all, I admire her. I am so grateful to ADA for giving Eleanor Clift this award, and our nation should be very grateful for her service, for her voice, and for her commitment to our democracy. Bless you, Eleanor.
When I was first told by Gregory King, a good friend who I knew from years ago when he was at the Human Rights Campaign, that I was in contention for this award, I thought to myself, the ADA, I've been aware of them as long as I've been alive. And actually, they're about as old, the organization is about as old as I am, and I may even exceed it by a few years. And one of the founders, Eleanor Roosevelt, and she played a role in my early life. When I was 13 years old, I won an essay contest on what the United Nations means to me. And it was sponsored by John Golden of the Golden Theaters in Manhattan. And I, born in Brooklyn, I grew up in Jackson Heights, Queens. And we went into the theater to meet the judges and to receive the award. And Eleanor Roosevelt shook my hand, and she said how similar our names were. My maiden name was Roloffs, so Eleanor Roloffs, Eleanor Roosevelt. So that moment, it was big then, and it's gotten bigger in the decades that have passed. So to be here via Zoom with other people who I've admired, E.J. Dionne, a favorite columnist, Jamie Raskin, absolutely committed member of Congress to all of the issues and the values that I've cared about for my whole life. I live in the district, but he represents me anyway. And then in thinking of my relationship to this group, I had a brother who was 16 years older than me. And he was what I really would call a New Deal Democrat. And, you know, the ADA and anything left of center was his. And he really gave me my politics and probably taught me how to argue too. And so I look at the moment that we're in with today's politics and the President Biden trying to equalize opportunity and income in this country and trying to push through tax increases on the biggest corporations and people with extraordinary wealth who I think you'd fairly argue haven't been paying their fair share. And I remember the 1% movement that unfolded in Wall Street. I view that as the kind of the starting gun to where we are today with this issue, and it's taken a long time. And so many of our institutions are under threat. The Supreme Court used to be considered court packing, had a negative connotation. No, we would never do that. But 9 is not a magic number. And looking at the court today, I think a reasonable case can be made to add 4 seats, which would go from 9 to 13, which equals the number of circuit courts. It's really what it should be. And there were a couple seats that were filled by a president who shouldn't have filled them. So I think that's another issue that we're facing today. Anyway, I've grown up with this organization. The ratings that are done all the time. It was Ted Kennedy was always in the 90s, and I think he got a 2% from the American Conservative Union, which is your opposite part. And so to receive a clock that says Eleanor Clift, timeless liberal, is a great honor, and I want to say thank you.
Of ADA coming out of where I spent, unfortunately, time of World War II, but having its base in the earlier years of the civil rights and the struggle to bring equality to everyone. So with the limited knowledge, limited memory, I remember being a part of that, coming out of the South, my parents fleeing the prejudice of the South that my brother and sister and I shared, and the legacy of the idea that things could be better, and ADA would be a vehicle to help bring that change about. University of Chicago, who had organized earlier, before World War II, were part of that and help me as much as you can. And they were part of organizing and expanding ADA. And I was part of helping them to do that. John was the, what would we say, the younger than Tim Black organizer, but he and I were partners in helping to organize ADA and encourage the participation in ADA in community Chicago and beyond. John was a very active person beyond just the local. I think, and that was kind of the program that is the younger people in schools are not, should have a sense of that history that helped to spur on and create ADA and inspire young people to know the past of the history of trying to bring about equality and freedom, and the demands of the future, particularly with the new technology that it makes communication much more easy, negatively or positively, so that they can feel a sense of responsibility towards their peers because of the legacy of their ancestors. And so I think ADA has a mission that continues throughout life that give a sense of responsibility and also the history of success in the struggle to make things equal.
Anthem for America. It feels more relevant now than ever. Listen now, my people of our ununited nation, a country that was born of freedom's declaration, of paper-written dreams that haven't quite come true. America, I love what you can still maybe do. America, remember the promises you made to those who came here wanting to believe in what you said, of justice and peace and a land that's really free. America, I love what you can still maybe be. America, do you listen to starving children cry, who cannot understand the reason for their dying, It's time to lay the weapons down, my brothers, can't you see? America, I love what you can still maybe be. Oh God, you are so patient with the slowness of our pace, and still there are so many who can't see your troubled face. People, there are others here besides just you and me. America, I love what you can still maybe be. America, I love what you can still maybe be.
Celebrate the 75th anniversary of Americans for Democratic Action. I note with great pride that my family members were among the founders of ADA, and throughout my life, ADA members were like family to me. As the son of Victor and Sophie Reuther and the nephew of Walter Reuther, I learned very early that some people were not happy with the liberal achievements of our family and the ADA. As we witnessed the assassination attempts on both Uncle Walter and our father. But I grew up experiencing daily the principles and struggles that were integral to the ADA. As we were activists in the movements for full civil rights for all, for universal health care and disability benefits, for the role of working people in growing our nation's economy, for making taxation fair and progressive, and for guaranteeing a minimum standard of living and adequate retirement income for all. When Dad became Director of International Affairs for the UAW in Washington, I was exposed personally to the fight for free trade unionism and democracy throughout the world by peaceful means, an agenda shared with the ADA. Family gatherings with ADA founders and leaders were frequent. Meeting with Eleanor Roosevelt at Hyde Park, swimming in Joe Rao's pool on summer Sundays, being invited to lunch with Arthur Schlesinger Jr. at the home of Phil Stern, and informal family get-togethers with Congressman Don Edwards and Donald Fraser. Later in life, such associations grew as I ran the presidential primary campaign of Senator George McGovern in Massachusetts, where we had great help from future Congressman Barney Frank and Father Robert Drinan. And then working with Senator Hubert Humphrey when I ran McGovern's Minnesota general election campaign. However, a memory which gives me the greatest pride is of the retirement party ADA organized for my father in 1972. But one of the highlights from this event occurred somewhat later, when the Nixon White House got access to the list of the 80 very prominent sponsors of this event, members of Congress, diplomats, leaders of labor and civil rights, and religious and educational leaders. And all 80 of these sponsors were added to the famous Nixon's Enemies list. Throughout the 75 years ADA has existed, I don't think there is any greater tribute. And I look forward with pride and hope to the next 75 years of Americans for Democratic Action. Thank you.
In January 2022, ADA will celebrate its 75th anniversary. You've heard a bit about this tonight. You'll hear more about this in the weeks and months to come. It's very exciting. We are the oldest progressive liberal organization, the granddaddy and grandmother of them all. And just like Eleanor Roosevelt and Walter Reuther and Hubert Humphrey and John Kenneth Galbraith and Reinhold Niebuhr helped guide us in the past, you can help guide us into our next 75 years. Your involvement and financial support is vitally important to us. I'm in, and I hope you are too. If you haven't already, go to adaction.org. That's adaction.org. Join me in supporting this wonderful organization. Please be generous, and thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed and were motivated by our gala celebration. There's so much work yet to be done, but we are up to the challenge. This year, in 2022, and in the decades to come, please join us at ADA to protect our freedom and advance a multiracial democracy. Thank you.